Hi guys, we're going to talk today about where people migrate within a country. Let me pull up that PowerPoint. And we're going to start by talking about interregional migration. So, why am I yawning? It's morning. School's going to start in like less than an hour. Got to get it together. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about interregional migration. So people moving from one region of a country to another, and in the past, people were moving for better farmland. So this is a perceived idea that there are better economic situations if people are moving to a different region. So this used to be looking for more abundant land on the American frontier. Now people are more often looking for jobs in different service areas, especially clustering in urban areas. And so it used to be westward expansion, um, and this contributed to a shift in the center of population. And this changed the center of population gravity. So it changes the location of the population center graphically, and it demonstrates the march of the American people toward the North American continent over the past 200 years. The center of population gravity has consistently shifted westward, but that rate of movement has shifted. So let's see if we have a map to look at. Nice, we do have a map to look at. So if we look at these little stars here, the stars show us how that center of population gravity has moved from east to west over time. So initially, the colonists are going to be hugging this coast, and then no, I said back. Okay, and then they're going to be moving gradually toward the west as more states are going to be um, colonized and actually become states. So we're moving west across Maryland and Virginia, West Virginia, through Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, part of Iowa. And so we see that up until today, the center of population gravity is now somewhere about Missouri. Now, so that doesn't mean like everybody lives in Missouri. That just means this is the center of population gravity, which is where kind of this center of this movement has shifted to. So what that means is if the United States were a flat plane placed on top of a pin, and each individual weighed the same, which would be lovely, the population center would be the point where the population distribution caused the flat plane to balance on the head of a pin, which makes perfect sense. Okay, so if we look at these maps, what we can see is the recent interregional migration in the United States. So this is how people are moving from region to region in the U.S. So you see in 1995 where people are moving back and forth from the northeast to the west, from the west to the Midwest, from the south to the Midwest, from the west to the south, from the northeast to the south. And then you can see that there's, to a lesser extent, that moving going on in 2010. So, and your book has a really good description of each of those transitions. So it has a transition, it has the explanation of 1790 of that hugging the coast, 1800 to 1840, the crossing the Appalachians, 1850 to 1890, rushing to the gold, 1900 1940, filling in the Great Plains, 1950 to 2010, moving south. And it explains why each of those things happened. But that interregional migration, what these graphics show us is that interregional migration has slowed in the 21st century. And in fact, that net migration between the regions is close to zero because the differences in employment prospects have become less dramatic. It's unlikely that the jobs in the Midwest are going to be really that different than the jobs in the South, and the jobs in the West are going to be really that different than the jobs in the Midwest. And the recession that happened in 2008 has really discouraged people from migrating because A, there are limited job prospects, and B, it's not as easy to find houses as it used to be to buy and sell your house. Um, Remember, we've talked about the housing bubble before, and so people aren't as willing to try and buy and sell houses or as able to buy and sell houses. So it's not as easy to move as it used to be. Okay, so the world's 5 largest countries in land area are Russia, Canada, China, and the US, and Brazil. So in Russia, interregional migration is encouraged eastward and northward by the government's decision to locate new factories and to offer economic incentives away from existing population concentrations. Let's see if we've got any pictures. Here we go. So they're trying to get people to the east and to the north. Why? Well, they've got lots of good stuff up there. There's actually lots of good minerals and oil in Russia. Guess what? It's real cold there. So nobody wants to go there. Why else? Because there used to be gulags there. And when you send your people to the gulag, the work camp prison as a punishment for doing nothing, it puts this bad taste in their mouths. Oh, you want us to go work where you used to put people in this frozen prison camp? Oh, no, thank you. Yeah, but so now they're trying to incentivize people to go and work there because there's some really great stuff there that would help out the country. But the incentives are not going so well. So they're trying to pull migrants in, and that didn't work under the Soviet plan. And they're trying to it says that the Soviets tried to send in a brigade of young volunteers during school vacations to help construct projects such as a railroad. I know that on my school vacations, I was really pumped to construct a railroad. Not so much as it turns out. So these policies are not working very well. Even when they transition to market-based economy, the Russian government, they're no longer dictating quote-unquote optimal locations for factories because, how can you say it's optimal when you freeze? So if we look at where people are living, look at this dark one, 1,000 people. Where are those? Nobody. Look at these poor people in Yatuks. That's not even that far east and north, and they're it's too cold. They're not even going farther than that. They're it's just too darn cold. Okay. So Canada shares a similar east to west interregional migration pattern with the U.S. They've got 3 westernmost provinces, and these are destinations for interregional migrants. Let's see if we have a picture. No, China. Okay, China, nearly 100 million people have emigrated from rural, remember emigrated is to go from somewhere, from rural interior to large urban areas along the east coast where manufacturing is prevalent. Let's look at that map. Okay, so we've got people coming from the interior, and they are heading to the east coast. And you see the size of these arrows dictates how many people are moving. So we've got lots of people, Guangzhou, Hong Kong, lots of people moving out to the coast where there's lots of manufacturing going on, lots of urban settings. So people are moving away from farming and agricultural situations and more into cities and urban production. And we'll talk more about that as we talk about when we get to the chapter on urban stuff and industrialization. So let's go back and look at Brazil. So in Brazil, this is great. The government actually moved its capital, physically moved its capital. I mean, they didn't put it on a truck, but they moved their capital from Rio de Janeiro to Brasilia. So they moved the capital from the Atlantic coast to encourage people to migrate to the interior of Brazil. Now, it makes sense that the capital had been on the Atlantic coast because if we think about what Brazil was like when it was first colonized, it was totally jungle, crazy jungle. And so they were like, oh, let's just stay here on the coast and we'll just stay here where it's safe and there aren't, monkeys. So then as, it becomes colonized and it becomes like safer to head out, they move their capital. And this was this huge, crazy financial endeavor. I want to say it was like 25, I'm going to say billion. That might be insane. I'm going to say $1 billion to like just recreate their capital, and it put them in tons of debt. But it has helped to regenerate Brazil. And hey, now they get the Olympics, right? So good for them. Okay, so since the Industrial Revolution began in Europe in the 19th century, there's been a global trend for individuals to migrate from rural to urban areas. And you learned all about this in World Civ, hopefully, well, no, you all took WAP. Did you? I'm sure you learned about the Industrial Revolution, but you probably learned about it in like 20 minutes. So what's going to happen is that we have this enclosure movement, and that changes the way people are able to farm. And essentially, if you don't have good farmland, you're out of luck. And so you're like, well, I don't have good farmland. I'm out of luck. I'm just going to move to the city. And so tons of people are going to move to the cities where factories are growing. And so that brings lots of human capital or human labor for the factories. So this is going to change the way urbanization works. And so that's how it is in England. But in the US, we're also going to have tons of people moving into the cities because, again, we have factories there as well. So look at that growth of 5% being in the cities to 50 to 80%. And people are motivated by economic advancement. So they're seeing that it's much easier, to be the worker who can always count on getting a paycheck in this factory than to be a farmer who has to trust the weather, who has to trust the soil, who has to trust what's going to be bought and sold that year. And so when you're kind of able to be, even though you're not the owner of your own business, you can trust that economically things are going to work out. And so that's a lot easier for people to be in the cities. There are other drawbacks, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, so most intra-regional migration. Oh, there's stuff about Canada. We gotta talk about that. Well, do we need to go back? Let's just say really quickly, the three westernmost provinces in Canada are Alberta, British Columbia, and Saskatchewan, which is just fun to say. Okay, oh, and Manitoba, Josiah. Manitoba, net out migration is being recorded in provinces from Manitoba eastward, like Josiah, who came to Kentucky. Okay, so now I'm on the right page, so we're good. So most intra-regional migration is in developed countries is from cities out to surrounding suburbs. So what we had previously is people going from rural environments to the cities, to urban environments. Now people are moving from cities, urban environments, to suburbs. So now people are going from big cities to the kind of surrounding, like Scott County. So rather than living in a big city like Louisville or Lexington is really as close as we get to a big city, they're going to move to suburbs, kind of like Scott County. So these people are not motivated by economic advancement, but they're motivated by a certain lifestyle. People want a little more privacy, so they don't want to live in an apartment. They don't want to live like in a condo. They want to have a house. They want to have a yard. They want to have a garage and a driveway. When you live in an apartment, sometimes you have a garage. Sometimes you just have like a thing you park under. Sometimes if you have a garage, you have to pay extra for it. So living in a house in a neighborhood has a really great draw. Like I live in Frankfurt. I have a house, I have a yard, I have a 2-car garage, and I pay, I have a really great rent, I'll be honest with you, but I pay extra for that. Like if I lived in an apartment in Frankfurt, I would have a lot lower rent, but it's important to me have a garage because I don't like snow. I'm going to be real honest with you on that one. I don't like snow. And it's important to me to get up in the morning, get in my car, not have to clean the snow off of it. I wanted to have a yard because I have a dog and I like him to be able to go out in the yard when I can't take him for a walk. So you have to pay a little bit extra for this, but so I'm not motivated by the economic advancement, but it's a lifestyle that I desire. Also, there are generally superior schools in suburban areas. Those of you who are familiar with schools in Jefferson County know that kids get bused to certain schools, and you may be going to an amazing school, and you may not be going to an as amazing school. Whereas if you live in Scott County, you know which school you're going to, and people move to places just because of the school that is there, and your parents can tell you that. Okay, so this is what we're seeing is people moving from suburbs to city, and then from city to suburb. And there are all kinds of graphic representations of where people live and how people live. And we are going to talk lots and lots about this. But this figure shows migration between cities, suburbs, and non-metropolitan areas in 2010. So we have here people moving like from rural areas to the city, people moving from the city to like rural areas, people moving from rural areas to the suburbs, people moving from the suburbs to rural areas, people moving from the suburbs to the city, and people moving from the city to the suburbs. And look at that huge arrow right there. So the largest percentage of people are moving from the cities to the suburbs because, I mean, look, you get to have a pool. Who wouldn't want to have a pool? Okay, let me see where we are. So developed countries experienced a new migration trend during the late 20th century when rural areas were characterized by net in-migration. So net migration from urban, so city, to rural areas is called counter-urbanization. Counter-urbanization. So counter-urbanization is when you're moving from urban to rural areas. So it's the opposite of urbanization. And counter-urbanization is most prevalent in places with rich natural amenities. So think the Rocky Mountains. Okay, this is a perfect example. My brother and sister-in-law live in Denver, Colorado. And right now, they live in a neighborhood. Even though they're in Denver, it's very suburban. Okay, so they live in a place where they have a yard, a fenced-in yard, they have a garage, they have a driveway, they can walk to the park, their kiddos go to like local preschool, and what are they doing? They're buying like 2 acres of land, they're going to build a house, and they're moving out to this area, I can't remember what it's called, but it's out like near where JP said, my brother said like where Buffalo Bill or someone is buried. So they're actually moving out to the country because they're like hikers, bikers, those kind of things. And so they're actually demonstrating counter-urbanization because they love to do those things. They love to go out in the woods, and they love to run, and they love to hike, and they like to do those things out in that natural area. So this is happening in places like Colorado, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, places that have those natural amenities. Okay, so this shows the percentage of people that are moving. Remember we talked about people are not moving as much anymore because it's hard to buy and sell houses. However, I'll tell you, in Denver, it is insane. I went to visit my brother. The day I got there, I'm not kidding, I got there on a Wednesday night, like at 9 o'clock at night. They said to me, oh, we just put our house on the market. So they're cleaning their house that night. The next day is Thursday, they had like 3 showings. Friday, get my day straight. Friday, they had like 3 more showings. Saturday, it was sold. Sold. That's insane. That's crazy. That is not normal, okay? And the other thing is in Denver, not okay, so normally when you put your house on the market, people are like, "Oh, okay, you're selling it for 170,000. Okay, I'll pay you 150,000." No, in Denver, they say things like, "Oh, you're selling your house for 170,000. I'll pay you 180,000." That because the housing market there is insane. By the way, their house is not 170,000. I'm not going to tell you how much it is, but things are a little pricier in Denver. Okay, so that's it for today, and I will see you guys later, alligators.